What's happening, guys? Welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the power of rookie picks. Everybody loves Dynasty. That's one of the key things about Dynasty that keeps you coming back is the rookie draft. It's what keeps you around, unlike conventional fantasy football, best ball, what have you. We're going to talk about rookie picks, how we handle them, trade them, etc. But who I'm very happy to have back with me for the first time in a couple of weeks, this guy himself, busy fella, you know him better as the man of the hour and the man with the power, Jerry Sinclair. Buddy, how you been?
Jerry has come back. You know, busy, and that sucks. Work is work. Sometimes I got to do it. It's unfortunate. But God, does it feel good to just sit at my computer screen and look upon the beautiful face of the waving Randell Young. I'm good. How have you been? You are busier than me, and you still somehow manage to do this like a psychopath.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, no matter what you want to do, you have to build it into your schedule. So we have one commercial we got to get to. We'll get to that in a second. But if you're looking for a book to read, especially if you struggle with a routine and discipline and stuff, is Jocko Willink. Jocko Willink, he's a famous SEAL, Navy SEAL, got a podcast. Who doesn't? But see what I did there?
Yeah.
And Jocko's great, but he's got a book called Discipline Equals Freedom. And while sometimes my life very much has a Groundhog Day, if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, classic, it can feel repetitive at times, but I can say that repetitiveness, or you can call it discipline, it frees me up to do the podcast, to coach baseball, to start jujitsu, to all the different things that I work into my week. It's just a schedule. I'm no one special.
Do not sell yourself short, my friend.
Well, I am not going to sell you short, man. I am glad you're back. Before we hit the record button, that's the name of our patron exclusive show. It's called Before I Hit the Record Button. Jerry and I spent a good 20 minutes talking about poker, dog poop, Dave Portnoy, a lot of things that is exclusive to our patrons. And they get this show early and ad-free if you're an audio consumer. Obviously, if you're watching, the dozens watching live with us on Sunday night. But if you're an audio consumer and you like podcasts, you get it early and ad-free. So you get the bonus content. We did bonus content last week with Seth. We did bonus content tonight with Jerry. And I think it was pretty good. Pretty good, Jerry.
Yeah. And you probably scared a bunch of people off talking about dog poop. But in truth, it was a good...
it wasn't a recipe.
No, we didn't analyze which poop we like better. It was... looking at society from a macro level.
It was just a little talk about poop, Jerry, because everybody finds poop funny, and if you don't, I question you. Listen, let's get the one commercial out of the way. Let's talk about Dynasty Deluxe, and we'll get into good people, bad tweets.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help to strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
It
Great
is a
deal.
great deal. We wouldn't be advertising if it wasn't. So, Jerry, I'm glad you're back. Last week when I had Seth Dywald on from the Dynasty Roundtable, we actually did a double shot of good people, bad tweets. They were pretty special. I've got one tonight a little bit more interesting. When I say the person's name, you're going to be like, uh-oh, here we go. But it's not, because I'm actually going to pair two things together for one topic. So this tweet that inspired this week's segment is from Dave Kluge. Everybody remembers Detective Dave many years ago. He has done very well for himself in the fantasy and content creation space. So big thumbs up for Dave. But Dave tweeted out, Caleb Williams only needs to be slightly above average as a passer to instantly be the best QB in Bears history. And what made me choose this as the one to cover is that I think it was the 33rd team, which I hate to put them out there after they let go of all their fantasy people, but they put out every team's last 4,000-yard passer. The Bears have never, ever had a 4,000-yard passer. So, Jerry, what do you think about Caleb Williams? Do you think that if the Bears were to go, and I'm pretty sure they're going to, is because we're going to, and this is also topical because we're going to talk about rookie picks here in just a minute. What do you think when I tell you these things? Do they have to go Caleb Williams?
I mean, I think they have to go Caleb Williams. You can't pass up. You can't miss on Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud as potential franchise-changing quarterbacks and think you're going to survive, especially when Justin Fields has never shown you that he is capable of being a winning quarterback. I think he's electrifying and he's fun to watch and he's exciting and he's pretty good for Dynasty. But as far as being a professional, that's, I mean, tough. As far as what Dave said, I think he's probably right, because if you've never had a 4,000-yard passer, the bar is not very high. We're not talking about Matthew Stafford where you need 5,000 or Joe Burrow or Drew Brees or da-da-da-da-da. 4,000 is not a huge threshold. Now, don't get me wrong. It's tougher to do it in Chicago. You got to play outside in Green Bay. You got to play all your home games in Chicago. And if you've ever been to Chicago, especially during that fall, early winter period, it's a hellscape to try and breathe, let alone to play football, to try and throw a football. It's a tough situation. Don't get me wrong. But I'm sort of with him on that.
Yeah. Funny thing about Chicago, if you go to Chicago from the months of like April through October, especially as like a single or a younger fella, may not be a better city in the entire country to go check out. If you go to Chicago like November through March, it's a cesspool. It's a cesspool of cold and wind and uncomfort and just not a great city. I elaborated a lot on Caleb, and we're actually going to talk about him here as one of our picks. I just thought this was really good. Like I knew that the Bears had quarterback woes, because when you think of quarterback woes, you think about Cleveland, right? The QB factory of sadness. But even Cleveland's had some 4,000-yard passers, and the weather in Cleveland also
not sunshine and roses.
Not sunshine and roses. So I'm going to give you a little Dana White. I'll give you a little Dana White. And then for Mike in the chat, later on in the show, I will hit you with some Crip Mac. But for now, Dana White.
In this room knows the way that I feel about a lot of things. Basically, I don't give a fuck is the answer to most things. Everybody's too soft. Everybody's too sensitive about everything.
That's usually true, Jerry. Everybody is too soft. Everybody is too sensitive. Especially if you talk about Justin Fields, but it feels like that the Twitter space has come to grips with. They're in the acceptance phase of Justin Fields finding a new team. Speaking of Justin Fields, Caleb Williams. That's one of the first things I want to talk to you about with rookie picks tonight. Right? Okay. Is if you have the 101, if you have the 101, and in your league. Are you compelled? Do you have to take Caleb Williams? Are you in the same boat as the Bears? And because your league mates know that, do you think that takes away some of the power you have as the GM of the 101?
I don't think so, but I also don't think you have to. We live in a world of the Dynasty community where people live in these absolutes. And I've said this the whole time we've ever done this show, that there are no absolutes in this game. If you would have told me that you were going to have Justin Jefferson 100% of the time over Puka Nacua going into last year, would not have been outrageous to say. Puka Nacua scored more points than him. So there are situations where the narrative is incorrectly determined. I think we will find out when we have the whole story, right? We don't, if he ends up in Chicago with a history of never having a 4,000 yard passer and he doesn't run like Justin Fields, well, if he doesn't throw for 4,000 yards and he doesn't run like Justin Fields, he's not going to be a great dynasty asset. So you need him to go be the absolute peak that the Chicago Bears have ever had in 100 years of their history for him to do that. But also, is that saying that he's not a better quarterback than everybody else? I think that's probably a reach too. I think we need to think more in line of ranges with people. 75% hit, 25% miss. Taking Jaden Daniels 35% of the time versus Caleb Williams 65% of the time, and so on and so forth. And I think that's how we should treat it. So
let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Let's say, and you're not this bad at Dynasty, but let's say you had 6 101s, all super flex. What ratio would you have of Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr.? Would you have like would you portfolio it that way? Would you want a little bit of everybody just in case?
So with a super flex league, I think I would probably not go Marvin Harrison Jr. Quarterbacks are just unbelievable assets that are just unmatched, really. But there's absolutely a percentage where I take Jaden Daniels, and probably a much smaller. I don't know if the 6 is probably a sample size that I wouldn't reach for Drake May there. But if we talked 100 leagues, would I take Drake May 3, 4, 5 times? I think probably. I think Jaden Daniels probably 20 to 30 times. Because we're sitting in a situation last year, we could look at this. I would guess if you had 100 league sample size, you would have seen Bryce Young go 101 60% of the time. And you would have seen Anthony Richardson go a ton. And you would have seen a smaller percentage of CJ Stroud. And then you look at the startup numbers going into 2024, and you're looking at CJ Stroud in that situation exponentially higher than all of them. So yes, there is absolutely a percentage that I would take certain players for sure. And then depending on roster makeup, maybe there is a situation where I take Marvin Harrison Jr. If I'm sitting there and I got Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, and then I got Anthony Richardson as my 3 or something, like, yes, maybe I'm pissing a little bit of value, but if I got a well-rounded roster that's ready to just club all of my league members, sure, there's probably 2 or 3 situations where I could take Marvin Harrison Jr. too.
See, and that's why I asked this question. That's why I wanted to share it with the listeners, is that there is that power that we have as Dynasty gamers, because the consequences of us getting it wrong are different than the consequences of Ryan Poles getting it wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Pace got to draft both Mitch Trubisky, who did get him to the playoffs, and Justin Fields. This is Ryan Poles' first opportunity to draft his guy. But like I've said before, he doesn't have a choice, because it's career suicide for him if he drafts anybody else or trades the pick and keeps Justin Fields. And Caleb Williams goes on to be the next best quarterback in the league to Patrick Mahomes. He'll always be the guy who passed on Caleb Williams. But if you take Caleb Williams, he can always be the guy who says, hey, I mean, what was I supposed to do? It's the same thing the Jags dealt with Trevor Lawrence, and it's very similar to what we saw a couple of years ago in Superflex, where you had to take Trevor Lawrence, or in the case of Saquon Barkley and Marvin Harrison Jr. There in a 1 QB, there's a clear line. I think that as a Dynasty gamer, you have very much the opportunity to draft whoever you want.
Bingo.
And because every league, not every, but a lot of leagues will have an Ohio State fan. you can ask yourself, how far comfortable am I going back to let someone trade up and maybe overpay for Marvin Harrison Jr.? I've seen dynasty rankings, not mine. Lord, no, not mine. But I've already seen that man as the wide receiver 4 in dynasty for some people. I love Marvin Harrison, Jerry.
But if he ends up as a Patriot or something, like, get the fuck out of here.
You know, well, I'm glad you brought up the Patriots, but because I want to circle back to that here in just a second. But remember, you have to have your own process. We're going to have a bunch of great guests on. We're going to do a mock draft next week. We're going to do 2 rounds because you can get a little bit more in. We'll try to get a guest or 2. Maybe we'll invite some of the Dynasty WarZone guys on, some player profiler guys. We'll knock out a rookie mock next week, 2 round. What do you say, Jerry? 2 round superflex tight end premium.
I like it.
So there you go. I want to circle back to the Patriots real quick. Now, and it comes up with you bringing up C.J. Stroud. You remember last year when Houston was a dead landing spot for a quarterback?
Yeah.
They had a bad GM, Nick Caserio. They had a rookie head coach who was a defensive-minded guy.
They had a wide receiver who had played for 2 years and hadn't done anything. The other guy was a rookie. And
all of a sudden, you draft a guy like C.J. Stroud, and things come together. And don't be surprised. And I want to give credit because I agree with this. I was actually talking to myself as I was driving. Ray Garvin brought this up on the Mind to Mansion the other day when he popped by with Matt. And I think it's great because I was very concerned about the landing spot of New England, especially being a big Drake May guy, because that could be where he goes. But I am not going to let that bother me because it's an unknown. And if you like a prospect, take a prospect. Another example from the wide receiver, you mentioned Marvin Harrison going to the Patriots. You know, I remember when A.J. Brown going to Tennessee was going to be a problem. What do the kids say? I'm old enough to remember when that was a problem. And I don't think it's a problem as much as we think it is. So I think you're going to see quarterbacks.
Theo agrees with you. Theo's taking a shot at me too.
Yeah, Theo Grimminger, the director of content here at Player Profiler, audio, video, he said if Marvin Harrison Jr. winds up a Patriot, he could see 160 targets. That's true, but he could see 160 targets in Arizona too. I would much rather him get those 160 targets from Kyler Murray than Mac Jones. But what if they sign Kirk Cousins? That's why we love the offseason, guys. But this 101, do not fall for this. You're going to hear so many narratives. And if you think you can get value and you're happy trading out, trade out. But don't feel like, because there's going to be this drumbeat, Marvin Harrison Jr. or Caleb Williams, Jerry. And I don't think you have to do it. Do what you feels right.
True. Especially with a class like this. I mean, yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of those unbelievable prospects as a wide receiver that we haven't seen really recently. But still, there's so many situations he could end up with that are not conducive to him being a successful dynasty asset immediately. Not to say forever, but we play a short-term game. And everybody wants to talk about, Jerry, this is dynasty. You can keep the players forever. Nobody does that. So if he's not going to jump to be an NVIDIA-like stock that's just skyrocketing over the last 6 months, I can wait. And yes, it's still going to be expensive. If I get in at NVIDIA when it's $500 versus right now where it's like $800, but I'm still seeing a little bit of that value. So that's my worry with all of these situations.
All right. Well, I want to talk to you about a couple of spots, and we're going to talk about trading here in just a second. But this is for our boy Mike. He is a patron, and he is a regular watcher here. So he wants it. It's his favorite sound drop.
The Crip Mac on Hood.
On Hood, Mike. Thanks for always being in the chat and supporting the show. So, Jerry, let me ask you a question. Would you rather have, we'll say Superflex, because that tends to be most
because
of the
this
leagues
is
we're in.
America, sir. Actually, it's not. We got listeners from everywhere, but
because
it's 2024. There we go.
This is true. I would say the ratio has flipped. When we started playing Dynasty and doing this podcast almost 7 years ago, it was 80% 1QB and 20% Superflex, maybe even less than that. And now it's probably more like 80% super flex, but we want to make sure that the one QB gamer, we got you in mind as well. So we're going to say super flex. Jerry, would you rather have the 108 in this draft, or would you rather have the 201 and the 204?
I would rather have the package of seconds, Randall. And we think, who was the 108 last year? Just to give me a comparison. So we're looking at probably some combination of like Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Will Levis. Is that fair?
Yeah. There you go.
Which one of those guys is absolutely setting the world on fire right now? And it's not fair to compare classes entirely, but I'm just living in a world of ranges here. Zay Flowers is fine. Will Levis set the world on fire week 1, and then he's fine. Quentin Johnston is Quentin Johnston. We don't have to beat a dead horse on that. And I could have gotten at 201, I could have gotten Rashee Rice. 204, I could have snagged, whoever. There's such a little gap in that pick range, and I get the extra person on top of it, especially with this class. I could get a quarterback with one of those, JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix or whoever, plus a similar wide receiver that's going to go at 108. Like I'm going to take like Troy Franklin, and if I get Malachi Corley later on, what is his percentage of production going to be less than Troy Franklin? We don't know, but just based on perceived value, 10%, 15%, plus I get the extra player on top of it. That just, it seems easy for me. I understand that people like the early picks because they're sexier. And by the time we get to 108, it's going to be really exciting. But I just feel like that early second, like that 201 pick is so critical because it's always the under the radar guy that ends up in the bomb ass situation.
It feels like Devon Achane was in that spot a lot last year. And I'm looking, if you want good Dynasty rankings, go get the Dynasty Deluxe package with Player Profiler. I just quickly pulled up some free rankings from The Athletic. In that 201 to 204 range, you could potentially, you mentioned Xavier Leggett, Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson. Those are some of the names. Braylon Allen.
That's the other thing about this class is you're not going to see those high-end running backs, which because there's not really any of those game-changing running backs, but there's running backs in this class that are going to have a role in the NFL. And I can pop off 2 of them if I want to do. What did we say? Draft running backs, trade for wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get potentially the RB2 or 3 in this class at 201, which is
very well could in Superflex tight end premium.
Unheard of in Dynasty. It's just that's my play. And what's going to happen when a running back gets an opportunity? Value.
I mean, if one of these guys, we'll have to see how free agency goes because that's kind of the next big thing is free agency. I think it's 3 weeks from Wednesday, if I remember correctly. Obviously, this week coming up with the combine. It'll be good to do a mock draft next week coming off the combine because everybody loves a good combine, Jerry.
I mean, listen, there's nothing better than the Underwear Olympics. Let's be real. And I say that with a little bit of facetiousness in my voice, but in reality, I'm going to watch every second of it. So don't think I'm high and mighty.
100%. And it's going to adjust the way that we look at some of these rookies. I will just say this as I get into my little take here on these 2 picks. Don't let athletic people doing athletic things make you make bad decisions because we know the guys who are good. And when they confirm that they're good, like Marvin Harrison Jr., if he runs like a 4.4 flat at his size, we kind of expected it. He can't get much higher. Be cautious with double counting because that's what happens a lot.
Are you on the side of the 108? Or are you the?
No, I'm definitely the 2 picks because that's going to take me into my follow-up question with this one right here. No, I want the 2 picks because
I do too. I won't say that there's not an opportunity with this class of these wide receivers that the 108 wide receiver can't absolutely explode and be the better pick in the long run.
Well, the reason why I picked the 108 for me, just from my rookie ranking so far, super flex, I've got the 3 QBs. Brock Bowers, because I play a lot of tight end premium as well.
Yep.
The 3 wide receivers. And the more I listen to people, the more I hear of non-dynasty gamers, right? But like Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper Jr., those guys, everyone's favorite wide receiver that doesn't do what we do, everybody loved Rome Odunze. And that was one of the guys that Dallas talked about way back in October on the podcast. And but that 108 becomes like the dead man's, the dead zone of the draft. And that takes me to my next question is the 110. What are you doing with the 110? Because I'll tell you, me personally right now, I'm looking to move it. Can I get a year 2 running back? Can I go get someone Zamir White in the 202? Can I move back a little bit? How very similar to what we did with the 108 or the 201 and 204. I'm looking to get out of that 110. That 110, it's worth something, obviously, because it's a first round pick, but that is an area of the draft I absolutely hate drafting from.
I think that is sort of the case every year, if you want me to be honest with you. That person is always like the person that people like, but ends up in a bad spot, but they're the guy, like Johnny Mingo, sort of. Like, it's just like, oh, he's got the opportunity and, he was a decent enough prospect and he went to, and then we get there and it's just not it. So I mean, listen, I am pretty much in most draft class, I'm going to try and get out of unless I need a tight end and there's multiple tight ends, I'm going to get out of the 108, 109, 110, 111 range. Just because I feel like that is the tight end premium sweet spot most times. I mean, we got Bowers and, when we had Pitts, you weren't getting a guy there. But I feel like most years that's where you snag that guy and he's the value that we get. But more often than not, yes, I am flipping that. And it's when you get to a point in April and then really in May, even March and now, nobody gives a damn about the guy who finished as RB10 or RB11 or, RB15 60 days ago. Like, they just don't care. But 110, well, he could finish as RB11 or RB10. And so everybody wants it. And so I can flip him and I can get a veteran, and I'm so cool with that.
Yeah, that is 100% what I'm looking to do. Because again, every year, Darrell Henderson was a 110 in the it feels
Royce
like
Freeman. I mean, we can name a bazillion.
Oh yeah, Josh Dotson. Just a lot of brutal guy. I am.
That was such a bad class.
People, I mean, and for the most part, it's true that rookie picks will only acquire more value as you get closer to the NFL draft. But sometimes I don't want people to realize that that these picks aren't always as historically, they're not great.
That's what I like. I like to tell people, like, Jordan McNamara is a good follow, and he is a proponent of that. And I always, whenever he's arguing with somebody, I always just tell him, let him learn the hard way. That's always the comment I put on it, because in time you will realize how often rookies don't work. Like, honestly, not, you don't have CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson in a class every year. It's tough. So getting out of it and getting value for your fugazi number that you have, I got 108. 108 doesn't mean anything if it doesn't help me win. And it doesn't help me win unless that person actually pans out to the level I need them to, which means I need them to be a top 15 running back, a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. And we're talking about the 8th pick of a rookie class. And that's the jump I need them to make. It's tough sledding, man.
Yep. I agree 100%. So I will say, you mentioned, when we talk about the 201 through the 204. So here are rookies that weren't super high draft picks last year and where they finished in superflex tight end premium scoring. Puka was the highest scoring rookie. He was not a first round pick.
No,
Sam Laporta, even he was the second, and this is tight end premium, was the second highest rookie scorer. CJ Stroud, obviously pretty good. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, those guys all did well. Jordan Addison was kind of in the middle, but your classmate that you graduated with at Michigan State, Jaden Reed, wasn't. He's the 7th most rookie points in PPR. Jaden Reed, same with Rashee Rice. He was a second rounder. Now Zay Flowers was the one dead zone guy, that 108 to 112. He was a dead zone guy.
And he finished the season sort of with that production. Like he was sort of on par with that, where you're going to take somebody, like he was fine. He showed flashes. You're not mad that you drafted him. You're also not super excited that you drafted him, which is the feeling with this kind of pick.
No, that's very true. That's very true. Well, listen, we're about halfway there. Let's get a quick word about Injury Finder.
Hey, you're in your fantasy draft and someone says, hey, that guy's injury prone, I don't want him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can! Injury proneness is real! At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare two players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, go get it.
There you go. Simple little app. You put it on your phone. Easy peasy. Now, Jerry, I do have a question for you.
Shoot.
And I'm going to share mine. But do you have a best practice when it comes to trading picks?
You know, I am a person, you're in a lot of leagues with me, so you know this to be true. I will give you every one of my late picks. I will never, ever, ever let a third round pick, a rookie pick, get in the way of a good deal. And if it means you want me to give you that little bit of sprinkles on top of your donut, I will give you those sprinkles and I will not think anything of it. Because if I get the person or the asset that I want, the third round pick means nothing to me. And every once in a while, they're Puka. And I jump off a bridge. But more times than not, a vast majority of times, the variance leans in my favor, where those third round picks are just, they're a scratch off ticket, which we've said a lot of times on this podcast, and they don't hit. And you end up crumpling them on the ground. That's why you give them for Christmas gifts. Yeah, here's a $5 scratch off. I love you. You get a chance to win big money. Oh, I lost, Grandma. That's what they are. So that's always my move. I will not let those late picks. I will not let guys who have not made a difference hinder me at all.
Yeah, and I want to answer before I tell you one of my best practices about trading picks. I want to answer a question from the chat. Someone said, who would I take at that 109, 110 range? I mean, I'm going to be, obviously it's going to be wide receiver. And I think you can put them all in a sack after the big three and shake them up. And you're just trying to grab the best one that you, just like last year. You know, last year, if you drafted Rashee Rice, congratulations, you scratched off a winner.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jaden Reed. Same thing with Tank Dell. And then there are other guys that didn't. Jonathan Mingo comes as an example as a guy who didn't. So I'm just going to, in the 110, it's probably going to be a wide receiver. And I'm going to go to what I should have done last year with Rashee Rice is just give me the one with a couple of factors, right? The least barrier to success. And that's exactly what Rashee Rice had. It was him. It was, who's the knucklehead they got from the Giants?
Kadarius Toney.
It was Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. I like Sky Moore. I'll admit that I was wrong. But there was a low barrier to success for Rashee Rice attached to a good quarterback. It probably goes without saying that the Bills are going to draft a wide receiver this year.
Yeah.
And that going to be tied to a good quarterback. It will really be that simple for me in the 108, 109. I'm just like same thing, same reason why I like Devon Achane last year. I'm not a huge Mike McDonald fan, but I do know the offense that he runs. I do know that's a high-powered offense, especially in those September, October, November months, which is exactly what it was last year. So that's why I like that one. So I just want to make sure we answer a couple of chat questions as we get going. We'll try to take a couple of others because we do appreciate all the likes and YouTube chats and Twitter and everybody else jumping in. My big one is if you want a certain player, especially if you want a Malik Neighbors, if you have a favorite, like Drake May is my favorite quarterback in the class. I'm not going to hide that fact. I'm a big Drake May guy. But if you like that player, now is the time to go get that pick, whatever pick you think it will take, because if you're looking for the player, then you got to go. Like if you want Marvin Harrison Jr. in a 1 QB league, you got to go get 101.
Yep.
But right now, a lot of people probably, especially if they're less savvy than you, and I say you as in the listener, because you're listening to a podcast in February about Dynasty Fantasy Football. I'm saying that there are league mates of yours and mine, quite frankly, that aren't as savvy as us. And so they might not be thinking that the 102, because to me, it's not the 102 in a 1 QB. It's Malik Neighbors. Maybe Rome Odunze. But if you have the 102, you can do whatever you want. Maybe someone gets off their feet and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s there. The 102 is the spot that I would be looking to get to, because once people start putting 2 and 2 together, we have a great combine. We have an NFL free agency, season that cleans up and straightens up some of the draft positions. People are going to start slotting them in. We're going to do a mock draft next week. More people are going to do mock drafts. Eventually, your league mates are going to catch up a little bit, and then the price of that pick is going to go up because you're no longer acquiring the 102. You're acquiring Malik Neighbors. So that's how I treat trades like that, Jerry, is like, I know. So like, what would I have to add to the 102 just to go get Malik Neighbors? That's kind of how I look at it. And I'm going to add whatever I feel like gets the job done. Is it my second? Is it a future second? If I have the 105 and I want to get up to 102, that's what I may have to do.
I'm with you. And what I will say is F everybody else. Take the person you want. Take the person that you think is going to help. We talk about things like, I'm just going to use the Lions as an example because there's a shining example of it in Jahmyr Gibbs, right? People did not expect Jahmyr Gibbs to go that early in the NFL draft, but they wanted him. They wanted him, and they knew they weren't going to get him when they had their second round pick. They took their guy. They traded up. They got their guy. Jahmyr Gibbs is an unbelievable talent, and they added an unbelievable talent to their team. You can do the same. If somebody else is screaming that it was a horrible pick, they don't know. Nobody knows. We have absolutely zero true insider information about how organizations run or their thought process or what they're going to do. Because honestly, it's February 25th. They don't know what they're going to do yet. It is just people that are talking, which is what we're doing. Don't get me wrong, which is why I always tell you there's a range of outcomes that can happen, because that's the best I can do, is minimize that range and have you make the best decision, because that's how I play. I don't tell you anything that I'm not doing. Am I right all the time? No. I drafted Hakeem Butler in the first round. I liked what I saw. I learned my effing lesson.
The Podfather called him Hakeem Bustler.
Yeah, and you know what? I was ready to be like, hey, Matt, you're wrong. And guess what he did? He spit directly into my face and showed me who actually was wrong. I just take the players you want. Nobody knows. You're not in the position rooms. You're not listening to the offense coordinator. You don't know what he's scheming. Defensive coordinators don't know what they're scheming. That's why they get shit on. Like, stop it.
Now, one last question, and then we'll try to take a few from the chat Maybe we'll do that a little bit more this off season. Try to get more Q&A with the listeners. Is there a tiebreaker? Like you're looking at two different prospects. Is there like ever any tiebreakers that you use? Because I'll tell you the one that I use while you think on this question for a second. Is just draft players that go to good offenses. It's
that was good. That was going to be my answer, but
it's really that simple. I know you're just like, well, that's just so simple. It is. Last year, I'm gonna use this list that I have here of offenses and the top point producers in Superflex tight end premium. Puka Nacua, LA Rams. Is that a good offense historically?
Yeah.
As long as Matt Stafford's healthy, been pretty good. What about the Detroit Lions under Ben Johnson and with Jared Goff at the helm?
They have been awesome.
Sam Laporta, pretty good. Now, I will give you that CJ Stroud definitely, at least for me personally, he exceeded my expectations. Bijan Robinson, he was good at football, and so there is the case where your offense can be cheeks, and if you're good enough, you can still. But then we go to Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah,
again, the Lions' offense.
Good offense.
Jordan Addison. The Vikings offense under Kevin O'Connell had been really good, and they were humming up until Captain Kirk got hurt, and then he still did pretty well.
Yeah.
Jaden Reed, Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, impressed, good offense. Oh, Rashee Rice. Oh, shocker, he did well. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, I've heard of those guys. Zay Flowers, he kind of had his moments. But Devon Achane, I mentioned Mike McDaniel and his offense. We know it's good. And then, of course, Dalton Kincaid and Tank Dell. But then you get to some of the other guys, and it's like Seattle's offense has been mid. It's had its moments.
Yep.
DK Metcalf's been down. Kenneth Walker, injuries notwithstanding. And then we look back and we're like, man, why did Jackson Smith and Jigba not flash more? Part of it was, obviously him, but part of it is that offense. So I would say if you have a tie and you're looking at two different prospects, ask yourself, is it a good offense, Jerry?
Here's the thing. People love to say process over results. The thing is we play a results game. It's literally all it is just the results of what happened in games. And if you pick a player on an offense that does not score tons of points, I'm going to blow your mind here, Randall. Your player will not score points. So yes, I'm with you. And they're
write that down.
Yeah, it's a profound
points equals points. Got it. Notes taken.
But listen, and there's outliers. Don't get me wrong. Bijan was on a poop offense, but also Arthur Smith historically ran the ball a shitload with Derrick Henry. Now, granted, didn't give Bijan the love we wanted. Still good enough for him to be successful. I mean, Quentin Johnston had a good offense. He's Quentin Johnston, so that didn't work out. There's outliers. There's always freaking outliers, but I'm with you. You are putting yourself in a better situation if you draft players who are in great offenses. It seems so easy, and yet when we get to April, it's like everybody forgets everything because XYZ player did awesome against Bama, and player 1, 2, 3 was awesome in the playoff, and we just forget. We're short-minded. I'm not judging. I am as well, but wild.
I do want to bring up some stuff for the chat before we start answering some questions from the chat. And we're getting a lot of love tonight from It's Chuka Baby, Matt B, and Anthony. And Anthony, I'm not going to do you and your ancestors the disservice of trying to pronounce your last name. I apologize in advance. But they're mentioning other things about breakout age, elite college talent versus elite. And on all of that's true. But I will allow personally the use of college resume as these guys go into their rookie season. But just like when you go into your job, whatever your degree is, if you got a degree, we have a lot of quote unquote blue collar electricians, contractors, carpenters that listen to this show. But if you're a college grad and you have a degree. Jerry, how often do you use your degree in your real job? How much does your college resume matter now that you're in the workforce?
I mean, my writing skill does a little, but outside of that,
Very,
believe it or not, I don't talk much about 7th century English history when I'm kicking a drunk out of a bar.
When I'm managing production on a daily basis, a lot of those business admin classes don't necessarily, pop up. I'm not saying they're not important, but I've heard this with Justin Fields now. We have 3 years of NFL film on him, 10 total wins, and people still want to say back at Ohio State. Jackson Smith and Jigba and all of those really good wide receivers, they're not walking through the door. An offensive line that didn't let anyone breathe on him is no longer relevant. We've seen you in the workforce. You could have a really good degree and you could have been magna cum laude, whatever the hell. Doesn't really matter. If I get you in the workforce, young Sparky.
Wait, hold on. Let me interject right there. I had to take 4 years of Latin because of my history degree. That means the greatest with praise. See? Look at, I am using my diploma. Nailed
there you
it.
go. Look at that. Young Sparky, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, mentor you with the real world. Hey, here's what you're doing. Here's where we're going. Just remember that. So, Jerry, let's get into some of these questions from these good peoples. I got to scroll back a little bit, so I'm filibustering. So it's Chuka Baby about an hour ago or so. He says he has the one in a 1 QB league. He or she, I don't know. It's Chuka Baby. They have the 104 and the superflex 106. It seems like I'm getting Bowers in both. Would you trade out? He has Evan Ingram in superflex and Jake Turd Ferguson in the 1 QB.
Would I trade out of that? I don't think I would. I mean, especially if it's tight end premium for sure. No, I'm taking them both.
I am gonna, if it's tight end premium, just get the guy. I know people are gonna say, well, it's Kyle Pitts, and we were but we were not pro.
No. Yeah, I was anti, but
we were not strongly pro taking Kyle Pitts. Again, this is why I like doing mock drafts, but I never get locked into anything. I just want to do as many mock drafts as possible, because then when you actually start doing it, it feels real. But if I had the 104 and the 106, I'm going to go to that league and I'm going to look at the three GMs in front of me. And at the 106, I'm going to look at the 5 in front of me. What do I think I'm going to get? Hey, if this happens, hey, what do I think they're going to take? Do I want to trade up? Is there someone, hey, I can move from the 106 and I'd like to get to the 103 because I would like to have my choice of the second quarterback off the board. There's so many things that you can do that we don't know right now, because we love mock drafts, and we love that you love mock drafts because you guys drive this train. But the real mock drafts that we'll do, literally the Sunday night after the NFL draft. I'm going to the draft, by the way.
In the D.
Pause. Those will be the mock drafts that you really want to tune in for, because we'll have landing spot, we'll have draft capital. But until then, just mock. But I would say if you're there and you like Ingram, and I'm a big Ingram guy. Now, I have Ingram as the 4th best tight end in Dynasty, but you don't have to draft him there. So just because I like him as the 4th best overall doesn't mean you have to draft him there. So I think he's really good. So if you get to 104, Bowers is on the board, you'd be like, guys, who wants Brock Bowers? Who's interested?
Right.
And this is one of those times where telling the truth can actually be good for you in Dynasty. You should always tell the truth most of the time. But remember my motto, I'll tell you the truth one time, I will lie to you. This is where the truth can actually help you in the league. Be like, look, I'm very happy with Evan Ingram. I'm very happy with Jake Ferguson. Would someone like to come up and get Brock Bowers right now? You have to, in a situation like that, if you put on your salesman hat, you might get a better ROI, Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, the other alternative is, what kind of veteran can I get in that situation? if I'm it's gonna be a 24-year-old or 25-year-old who's had a great season, and I'm just gonna try and profit off of rookie hype. But I'm cool with Bowers too, like 100 out of 100, and I am well known for hating taking tight ends, but I just feel like you're past the tier, and if you can get that guy there, that seems pretty good.
I will say this: if Brock Bowers goes 5th overall to the Chargers in a Jim Harbaugh offense with Justin Herbert, I would have zero problem if you took him as the 103 off the board in a super flex tight end premium.
But now let's say it's not tight end premium.
Oh, then
I'm probably trading out of it.
You know, I wouldn't take him any earlier than the 104 in a non-tight end premium. No earlier, even in the choices.
Well, no. I'm saying with those picks in general, if it's not tight end premium, you just trading out.
Yeah, I mean, because I know Matt likes Brooks, the running back Brooks. The guy, I'm just drawing a blank because I think
I would probably trade out of the 104 and a 1 QB. I think I'm probably sticking with 106 in Superflex.
Trey Benson was who I was thinking of, by the way.
See, I like Jonathan Brooks. Brooks is my dog. I know he's hurt, but
in 1 QB league, if I don't have the 101 through 103, I'm more than happy to let someone else push the button on 104.
That's
because
I'm cool with 106 though.
I could see a world where, given the right landing spot and draft capital, where Rome Odunze could leapfrog Malik Neighbors. I don't think it'll happen because the Malik Neighbors drumbeat has gotten so strong that the contrarians of the world are already wanting to put him ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. I really like Malik Neighbors, but I've been doing this a long time, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver prospect I've seen since Calvin Johnson. I'm not going to outthink the room. I'm just going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. All right, I got three. I have 3 comparisons of wide receivers. Jerry, you can tell me which ones you like the best, which ones you disagree with.
Go.
Malachi Corley, who is one of my favorites. The comp from the chat is Deebo Samuels. Roman Wilson as a mini Amon-Ra St. Brown. At least I hope he means Amon-Ra, not Equanimous, because Equanimous sucks. Good on the podcast, though, with his brother. I do like him there. And then Roman Wilson equals Nico Collins. So I'll start with Roman Wilson. You're wearing a Detroit hat. Does Roman Wilson remind you more of a mini Amon-Ra St. Brown or more of a Nico Collins?
I mean, he plays probably more like Amon-Ra, but it's tough to say that he's Amon-Ra. Roman Wilson is one of those players that I don't know. Because watching him at Michigan, now granted, it was not a high-flying air raid attack. And if you watch them at all, you know that they played a very boring, excellent, but boring brand of football. He was just good. He was never awesome at anything, but yet he was always open. So he creates space, which makes me think he's closer to Amon-Ra. Nico was just a effing animal at Michigan and last year. He was just beating people and bodying them and mossing them and everything else. So Roman Wilson's one of those players that if he's literally never relevant in dynasty circles, or if he finishes as wide receiver 13, I think that entire range is open for him. He's just a person I can't put a finger on, so I don't want to be disingenuous about it.
Yeah, Anthony brings up a good take in the chat. You know, Michigan had a great defense and rarely had to throw. Let me go back to Nico for a second. Do you think that CJ Stroud and the offense, do you think that's what unlocked Nico Collins? Do you think he flashed at the end because Tank Dell was hurt? I thought Tank Dell was taking over that offense. Do you have concerns about Nico going into 2024?
I mean, there's going to be weeks where both of them are just poop, because I think both of those wide receivers are good. And I think CJ Stroud can always get them the ball. And I there's going to be certain games where they just take over and the other one is just not there because they don't need him to be, because they're trying to win games. They're not trying to win us matchups. And if one person is torching one of the other corners, they're just going to keep feeding them. So I think there will be headaches. I think they'll both be fine. I don't think either of them are going to be absolutely just bananas awesome. So yes, I have concerns about both, but I also think both are good. Like I just think I've always thought that Nico Collins was the best wide receiver on that team. Even when he was at Michigan, everybody had him pegged third behind Tariq Black, who you've never heard of, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's just never been excellent. So I mean, it's tough. I wouldn't be surprised if either one eliminated the other one, and I wouldn't be surprised if both of them were just middling.
Yeah, Roman Wilson's going to go in a very interesting part of the draft.
Yeah.
Because you have like Ladd McConkey in that range. You're going to have just a ton of guys. But the other guy in the chat was Malachi Corley compared to Deebo Samuel. I don't think he'll quite get as many rush attempts as Deebo. I mean, it's going to come down to the offense that he lands in. I'll be honest, when I see him play, I kind of see more of a Cooper Kupp. Now, he could be a better athlete than Cooper Kupp. We'll see that at the Combine this week. I just like the way he runs his routes. I like the way that he creates separation. I think I don't want to call him Puka Nacua either, but I like wide receivers that play that brand of football, that really do, that have the ability to produce yak, that have the ability to produce separation. They can run routes close to the line of scrimmage and take it an additional 20, 25 yards, whatever it is. They don't have to beat you with long speed and jump balls. That's the way the game was played 10 years ago. It's not really so much how it's played now. And he is going to be one of my dudes. Like if I had to say out of everyone that I've done the research on this year, so far I have two dudes, Memphis dudes. One is Malachi Corley, huge fan. And the other is Drake May. And this is why I love social media. One of the few reasons I love social media is like getting non-dynasty and fantasy football content creators' opinions on these guys. You know, Steve Smith really was showing Malachi Corley some love. TJ Hushman's
for the record, that I just started watching the Steve Smith stuff. Bro's so awesome.
It's fantastic.
Great.
It's fantastic. Because you know the saying is real. It's game recognized game, and when I see guys like Steve Smith talk about a guy, is he always right? No, even though he played, you can't. He should be in the Hall of Fame. But even though he played the game, he's going to have misses. Another guy that I love who does this is TJ Hushmanzada. You know, he put me on Michael Wilson last year, and I still think Michael Wilson's going to be a thing this year, especially if Marvin Harrison doesn't go there. So it's a wonderful time of the year, Jerry, and it was wonderful having you back. And thank you guys. So if you're listening to this on Wednesday, well, I'll back the truck up. If you're listening to this on Monday on patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone with the before I hit the record button portion with Jerry, again, talking about poker, dog poop, and Dave Portnoy. So poker, poop, Portnoy in the before I hit the war zone, and you got it early and you got it ad free on patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. And we're getting ready to start up our newest startup. Neil has got everything cleaned up. We are ready to run. That's patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. And Jerry, let's come back and do another one next week.
I would absolutely.
We'll bring friends. We'll try to get the sleeper set up to where we can actually show the draft on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, which is where I was taking that point, if you're listening to this on Wednesday and you're like, shit, I would like to get Memphis or Jerry or maybe Dan's back in here with us. I would like to get them to answer a question for me. You know what? If you're not watching on YouTube, I can't answer your questions. If you're not asking questions in the group chat, I can't answer your questions. I don't want to miss anybody, so I'm going to do my best. But Rubio, Anthony, Chuka, Matt B, all of you guys, thank you so much for all the interaction, all the questions. We're going to make that a part of the off season. We'll try to save the last 10 to 15 minutes. We'll answer questions directly from the show. Matt's like, what's the question, bro? I don't remember your question at this point, Matt, but I appreciate you listening. And Jerry, I appreciate you being back.
Thanks, buddy. I'm
You
upset that I
think
brought
work we'll come back next week for some more?
If not, I'll just quit. No, I won't. But
You probably shouldn't.
Listen, listen, I'm in a bad mood. I brought up Hakeem Butler and it brought back PTSD. It's just a terrible time.
I mean, it could have been worse. I could have brought up Corey Coleman. That's a different conversation for a different day.
See,
Anyway,
that's insider joke. That's for the longtime listeners.
That is for the longtime listener. But for you, the new listener or the longtime listener, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. We'll be doing some more stuff. And at some point, I've got some big announcements. I've got a new show in the works and some stuff. So stay tuned. Subscribe everywhere. Leave a 5-star review. Join the Patreon and have a good damn week. We'll see you next time. You guys, I'm filibustering because I got to hit a button here. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.
He can't figure it out.
It's a computer.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.